All right, Chris, we are back. Can you believe it? This is episode 15. I was keeping
Oh.
track. Yeah, right. Um, and it hasn't disappointed. Every week seems to be providing plenty of news to talk about. I'm Justin Schoenfelder, the CEO and founder of Fantasy Elect, where we're bringing the fantasy sports experience to politics. And Chris, who are you?
I am Chris Matola, a 40-year Republican media consultant.
That's it. I talk about you a lot, Chris, by the way. I feel like I'm having a lot of political conversations lately, and I talk about our podcast, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I do it with my political advisor, and he's done all of these campaigns. You got to check us out. And one person I talked to at South by, I don't even think I told you this story last week. Stop me if I did.
Yeah.
She's still best friends. Her best friend is Tom Swozey's daughter, the guy who won the New York third. And so we had this hour and a half long conversation. I went to a VC event, probably should have been talking to VCs, but I was so enthralled with her. She was like, yeah, we went door to door, we were knocking. And I was like, we covered him in an episode. We talked about how he gave the blueprint for Democrats. So she messaged me on maybe Monday or Friday of last week. And she was like, I found the podcast and I sent it to my friend and said, hey, pass this to your dad.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, we may get some comments in the comment section from Tom being like, yeah, you guys got it right. Or maybe, whatever. So I said, well, listen, next time you talk to him, tell him we're happy to have him on the show and give us some inside the trenches dirt on how we figured what he was doing out.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah. What about on your side? What are you looking at? What's going on in the trenches?
Interesting primary last week in North Carolina primary, and I had the guy. We spent the least amount of money. But we ran the smartest race, and now we're in the runoff, running against a woman who has spent about $7 million to run for office so far. Once again, showing that I have the wrong candidate. No, but I like my candidate. He's a good guy, but so we'll see. It'll be interesting. The runoffs are always interesting because it's a really small pool of super voters.
Yeah.
And, everything is up in the air with those because they kind of like see the secret handshake in primaries. Primaries are always about the secret handshake.
Right.
And if you get on the wrong side of that secret handshake, it's just about impossible to win no matter how much money you have.
Wow.
Because you talk about a congressional district and you're talking about affecting 20,000 voters.
Right.
That's not a lot, and you've got to do overkill to target them on something like TV. And there's ways to do that with digital and ways to do that with audio and mail and stuff. But it's a different animal. It's a different animal, and it's kind of specialty stuff. But
I was doing the math,
and what was funny is yesterday was the Ohio primary. Who's gay, right?
It's that is a big one for us today. We never did talk about the J.R. Majewski, I don't know how you say his name, guy who dropped out like 2 weeks ago. I saw in the last week, I think it was, Trump was hailing Mr. Majewski at a Ohio rally. I don't know if you saw that or not. I wanted to go back quickly. There's 20,000 voters in that North Carolina congressional district. I was doing the math the other day based on the most recent census. 435 members of the House. What is it, like 800,000 in each congressional district? The way they break it up is like 850 or something like that.
I'm sorry, you froze there.
Oh, I was just saying that I was like literally doing the math the other day, just in my head. I didn't have a calculator, but figuring out the 435 members of the House based on the most recent census and the population. I think it's like what, 850,000 in each district, something like that.
Yeah, but roughly, it kind of bumps around. Yeah,
and it could be less. I don't know what the total population of Wyoming is. I know they have only one representative, so I guess it could be less. But and you're saying that 20,000 for the race in North Carolina, 20,000 votes.
I mean, there'll be a general election in the fall, but it's a Republican
Right.
seat, and Republicans are going to win it.
Right.
And it's a really small majority, or a really small, super small plurality. I mean, and that's the way primaries are. Our friend Tom Suozzi, our newfound friend Tom Suozzi. I mean, that was probably a both sides all in spent $30 million, and it was probably 50,000 total votes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's I could be totally wrong on that, but that's my memory of it.
Yeah.
There are fewer and fewer competitive seats and marginal seats in the country, due to a lot of reasons. I mean, the big complaint is always redistricting, but a lot of it isn't redistricting. A lot of it is just the way districts change, and things become more population or less population, or more urban or more this or more that. And there are a number of seats for instance, in Pennsylvania and New Jersey that used to be competitive seats. And while the district boundaries have changed slightly, they haven't changed in meaningful ways, and they're no longer competitive. And one of the things that some electoral reform that people push is to make seats more competitive, and make them more, because the idea, if you have a competitive seat, you're going to have to be a moderate in order to win it. You can't be an ideologue. The other argument on that is that should seats be competitive or should seats be representative?
Well, I think so my question for that would be, like, I saw that Governor Evers in was it Wisconsin, Minnesota? I don't know. He just signed that they reversed the Republican redistricting, right? They just did a new legislative map. So the question, I guess, my question, with maybe my own bias built into it, is that, is it about being representative, or is it about gerrymandering it so that you are representative, but you picked who's going to be in your district to a degree where you're focused on representing only those that agree with you, right?
I work for some congressmen who are ideologically not aligned with the district, but they were very popular and always got reelected because they weren't hyper partisan, and because if you needed shit done, Social Security check found, this dog lost, zoning thing, they would run interference no matter who you were. And people like that tend to be very popular, and voters will forgive you if you are not lockstep and if you're not a fucking crazy. I mean, if you're running around doing stop the steal and fluoridation in water, or you don't have a mask on and it's genocide. If you're that kind of congressman or elected official, you good luck and God bless. But if you're coming to things naturally and are generally agreeable and try to help, voters will look the other way. I mean, perfect example is Sherrod Brown in Ohio right now.
Yeah.
Ideologically, certainly out of touch with that
for sure
state, and voting record certainly out of touch with that state. But right now, I would bet on him fairly heavily to win.
That's one of our, we might as well, let's jump right in. So Sherrod Brown versus Bernie Moreno, you're going to take Sherrod Brown in that one. Didn't Moreno won the Republican, I think, right?
Moreno won, and it was do you know about the whole gay thing?
No.
Oh,
no, I don't.
It is worth going down the rabbit hole. So this week, before the election, I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday, Associated Press ran a story that Moreno had. It was either I think it was a Grindr account, might have been a Tinder account, and that he did in 2008 when he was owned a series of car dealerships, and it said, looking for a hot young man for action when I travel. And AP ran the story, and of course Moreno's people denied it, and they said, and here's an affidavit from the guy that set up the account because it was a prank when he was working for the dealer, and it was a kind of a prank for that. Which, if it's true, I mean, it could be a cover, and everybody's kind of suspicious of that stuff. On the other hand, it appears that the account was only accessed once to create it, so it looks like something. It looks like it was somebody did a joke and then took a screenshot and said, "Ha ha ha, this is you," kind of thing. But anyway, that was in 2008. What it was is that it was a clear opposition research dump. One of the campaigns clearly had it because fucking AP reporters couldn't find their ass with the fucking spotlight.
Yeah.
So somebody fed them the thing, so they got fed. And in a different world, in the world kind of when I was starting out, a reporter would never run that story,
right?
Unless they had some kind of cooperation and they had, or they would have held it or something. But it was clearly a last minute smear thing.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, Moreno won anyway, and Moreno kind of counterattacked his opponent for being pro-gay rights or pro-trans thing, or whatever the fuck it was. But it was this back and forth thing. But Moreno won very handily. But again, I think he's got a very tough race against Jerry Brown.
Didn't the North Carolina congressman, I can't remember his name, that was in the wheelchair, he was also, didn't he say he was gay as a joke as well? You know what I'm talking about?
I'm sorry, what was that again?
Didn't the North Carolina congressman that lost a couple cycles ago that was in the wheelchair, wasn't he also gay as a joke? Wasn't that his defense as well? What was the very young gentleman? I don't really know much about his
Madison Cawthorn.
Yeah. Wasn't he like gay as a joke when he got called out as well?
Yeah, and I never know what the end of that was. Is that
he lost the seat.
Yeah, and I always, I don't know what that was. I mean, and it's part and parcel that people called out and gay. I mean, I had a client, a senator who lost a really close re-election, and the last week. They had some guy wrote a book and said, "Oh yeah, he always went to gay bars in D.C." And which wasn't true. He had gay friends, but he wasn't gay. But it was a last minute smear, and you never how those things work. But they put this author was on public radio all over South Dakota. So I always say defund public radio, defund PBS, because they just put this guy out who wrote this bullshit book, and I think there was a lawsuit that was settled. But that's kind of not the only reason my client lost, but it was certainly a contributing factor, I think.
I mean, listen, I've been to many a gay bar in New York. I worked at a bar, lots of gay friends. I went to a place called The Cock on the Lower East Side, and it was like a rooster out front. Why can't the guy just say, have you never been to a gay bar and seen all the hot chicks that are there just having a good time? It's a really great place to pick up a chick if you're the only straight guy. I just don't understand you know what I mean? Like, I've been to a gay bar. To me, that's a huge difference than saying, I was gay as a joke. Isn't this funny? Tee hee hee hee. Like,
right.
I've never done that. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. That's interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean, and again, this was a different thing. This was just kind of a, like you were saying, it was a harmless enough thing. I mean,
right.
So here's tales from the crypt. When I was in college, um, the best clubs to go out dancing, because I used to date women in ballet, and that was my thing. But the best place to go were gay clubs because they had
Sure.
great dance floors. There weren't a lot of people. There were no fights.
Yeah.
And like, we used to get dressed up and they were open till like 4 a.m. And that was like the whole thing. So it was like, have you ever been to a gay bar? I'm like, well, which one? It was like some were better than others.
Chris, I'll tell you, the first time I went to the Cock with friends that I was bartending with in New York, one of the managers was gay, one of the bartenders I worked with. So they take me to this place, and I've only been in New York for a couple months, and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna go to this. We're gonna go out after work. Not sure you want to go. We're going to a skate bar." I was like, "Yeah, sure." We get there, and it's called the Cock, and there's this rooster out front, and people are going off. I went to the bathroom. People are doing blow and whatever, and they have this guy. On the main bar, there's a guy dancing on the bar in a banana hammock. Is base,
Mm-hmm.
that's all he's got on, and it is a very jarring. If you've never been to something that overly,
Right.
out of your element. So we're leaving, and we're in the car, the taxi, all of us, and I was like, guys, nobody hit on me, and they're like, well, did you want them to?
Right.
And I was like, yeah, I mean, it would have been nice to be able to at least say no, thank you, thanks for the offer. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like,
Right.
what's wrong with me? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they were like, well, you were putting out the straight vibe pretty hard. I was like, well, I mean, I did feel a little uncomfortable at first, but I mean, come on, like nobody wanted to try to turn me. Nothing. Like
Right.
I was a little hurt by the fact that nobody hit
No
on me.
self-esteem issues have to take it up.
Yeah.
Right.
I've been trying to work that off ever since. I've been like, come on, somebody at least. It's funny.
When
I
I
will
was in high,
say,
yeah, sorry. No, I
I
was
was
going
just
to say,
gonna say, well, the one last thing I was gonna say about Moreno, I'm happy to hear what you have to say, but I'm looking at this picture from this New Republic article about Trump-backed MAGA Senate candidate linked to gay hookup site. I don't know anything about him. He may not be gay. He may be. I personally could give a shit less. I will say the picture, he looks very gay. He's at a rally wearing what looks like it used to be red, now it looks pink, and he looks very like, hey boys, like just what he's doing. I'm gonna send you a link to this, but the first thing when I saw it, when you were telling me the story, I thought to myself, oh yeah, this dude's gay. This is 100% what I thought to myself.
yeah, he is. I will say he is a dandy. He's Cuban extract,
Oh well,
and
then yeah,
he's
you never can
very,
tell.
he's very polished. So when I went to high school, when I was in high school, I had a job as an usher at a movie theater in. Um, it was the art house. It was one of the local art houses, and I had it through junior, senior year of high school and through college. But the area was notorious, and everybody, male hustlers, pimps, prostitutes, porn theaters, drug deal, and it was really an interesting way to, is he gay? No, that's Sam. He's a hustler. I don't know if he's gay. It's like, it was that kind of thing. But it was really kind of an interesting that I've never kind of had that. I guess being exposed to it at an early age and kind of like,
Yeah,
he's working. Why don't leave him alone,
yeah.
right?
There's a difference
Trying to make a
between
buck.
being gay and trying to make a buck. That's right. That's
He's trying to
funny.
make a buck. It's like it was
So
hard in that
you're
mid '70s economy.
so you're gonna take Sherrod Brown over Bernie Moreno,
Yeah,
yeah? Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And now the question is going to become: is that Trump is going to win Ohio? Could win it by 20. 15 to 20 is more likely. I mean, I think 10 to 15 is more likely.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of votes to overcome. But I think Sherrod Brown has a very good campaign team, excellent campaign team.
Yeah.
And he is one of those kind of, we talked about that. I mean, ideologically, he is totally out of touch with the state, but he's genuinely considered to be an accessible guy. and a fairly likable guy and a normal guy. He comes off as relatively normal as politicians go. And that kind of culturally goes a long way, being normal. And he will have endless amounts of money. He will have no bottom to his money because he's a seat that the Democrats have to keep. So he's going to spend his campaign on his behalf. It's going to be $100 million for that seat. And Moreno will maybe spend, and allies maybe spend 50 or 60. So he'll be outspent by 40 million. And that's meaningful. But the other problem with like a guy like Brown, if you're the challenger, is that people have already voted for him multiple times. So he's not a monster. He's not a crazy thing. He's not a, pro-terrorist, Antifa kind of, crazy kind of guy.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to get any of those to stick on him, right?
Yeah, they'll try, but it's very difficult.
I will say though, Sherrod Brown now, this is going to be the first cycle where he's been on the ballot with Trump. So
yeah,
it may affect the turnout. It may affect the energy. It may affect the party affiliation. They may just go down ballot and just do all Republican.
He has a very tough race, but I mean, looking at Tim Ryan, who lost to J.D. Vance last cycle, and again, not a presidential year. But it was closer than it should have been, all things considered. And again, beating an incumbent is really difficult. So if you're the Democrats and you've got to defend Casey in Pennsylvania, Brown in Ohio, Tester in Montana, they're very difficult fights, but they're fights you want.
Right.
They're fights that you really want because those are candidates who come off as normal and they come off as likable.
Right.
They could be, torturing small children and animals in their basements, but the general perception of them is that they're likable, normal people that you can actually have a conversation with. And I think that more and more, especially when you go to you look at the presidential thing, there was nothing remotely normal about Trump or Biden. And I don't think most people could imagine. We used to call it the beer test. I don't think most people could imagine. Well, actually, neither Trump or Biden drink, but most people couldn't imagine having a beer with Trump or Biden.
Right.
I mean, but Bob Casey, John Tester, Sherrod Brown, I think you can.
I have to tell you because I just looked, by the way. So right now, the current, I don't know how much is reporting. They've called it, but I don't know if it's all in. But so Trump has 79.2%, greater than 95% of the votes are in. So 79.2% of the vote in Ohio. In our contest, we had the line at 79.7. That was pretty damn good.
Right. So what's he now? 79.2?
79.2, yeah. I'm a little shocked at that, by the way, because
I had the under, right? Didn't I have the under?
I think you did have the under on that.
I had the under.
And I'm shocked that Nikki pulled 14.4, that Haley pulled 14.4% out of the race. I don't know that bodes well for Trump. I mean, he's going to crush it, obviously, in Ohio. Ohio is a Trump state, but that might be indicative of an overall squishiness of his prospects nationwide. It ties into our next something we can talk about next. So, did you see that RFK Jr. is considering Aaron Rodgers as his running mate?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to. People always say that I'm going to run. If they get elected, I'm going to move to Canada. My wife's a Canadian citizen, so I am moving to Canada if that happens. It looks like though, and it's like. But by the way, and it came out. Rodgers was talking about conspiracy theories about Parkland or something privately, and I'm of two minds of that. First, are you fucking insane to say that was a false flag or a private or a fake thing? But I think that we go down a really slippery slope as a culture when what you say in private can be held against you. You know, because I know a lot of people who are otherwise well adjusted who, sitting around having pizza or watching a game or, at a bar or out, and people say, "Hey, did you hear about this? What do you think about that?" "Oh, I think that could be true." Like when we start making people pay a price for that, it becomes like Soviet Politburo, like watch what you say to your neighbor because you're never going to know. And I think that,
Yeah.
and I think you have to defend lunacy. I think you have to defend people's right to be stupid and lunatics. I mean, and again, I mean, I hate people talking about private conversations, I guess.
I don't necessarily disagree with you on that. I mean, I will say, like, what it does do, I have two thoughts on that. What it
Yeah.
does do is I think Americans, and even me, we have a real deep distrust when we start thinking that politicians are saying one thing in private and one thing in
Yeah.
public, because we already know that they're lying to us all the fucking time, right?
Right.
So people do want to hear those private conversations because they feel like that's the truth. They feel like what you're saying in your campaign spot is just bullshit political stuff. But what you might say in private at a dinner to a guy who's giving you 10 grand, that's probably closer to the truth of what we can expect from you, right? So I don't disagree with you, but I feel like it's fair game in the sense of, like, it's not fair game that to, like, bug you, to put a bug in yourself. But if the person that you have that conversation with comes forward or shares it and it's no longer private, I think we all want to know that because we want to know what you think. It's different with Aaron Rodgers because, in my opinion, he's just a quarterback. I give a shit less what he thinks.
Right.
But now the second thing that it makes me think, however, is that those two dudes are birds of a feather, and I could see them flocking together. And it just reinforces that I don't think RFK is a serious candidate. Like, I would like to like RFK in some things that he says, because I think, like, oh, okay, I understand where you're coming from. But I mean, some of his picadillos are just too much. And now to reinforce it with this potential running mate of somebody who's, like, seems even further out there is, like, I think we want to know that. And the reason I bring him up is because you've talked before, and I've gotten it from you, and everything seems to be trending that way, is that if RFK is in the race, he takes more from Trump. And as I said, if Haley's getting 14.4% in Ohio out of the race, is there a national squishiness where wherever RFK can go, can he steal enough of that soft support of Trump the way Haley just did in that primary?
Here's my prediction about RFK Jr.'s running mate. It will be a multimillionaire, if not a billionaire. And that's how it'll fund the campaign.
Bill Ackman.
I don't know if he's got that kind of money, but like something like that. I'm not going to say it's Ackman, but it'll be like some, some little known Google founder.
Right.
It'll be like the Paul Allen of Microsoft. I mean, somebody you don't really know, but it'll be somebody like that who's kind of a harebrain. Not Paul Allen was a harebrain. I mean, but I'm just saying it'll be a lesser known figure, and I'll bet that, but it'll be somebody with deep pockets that will fund the campaign.
Elon Musk.
That's going to be. I'll guess. Yeah. No. I mean, he's got more shit to do.
This isn't even on our list, but have you seen this shit with Don Lemon? Have you been watching the interview clips?
It was hysterical. It was hysterical.
It's hysterical, but what I love about it, being in the stage of, like, starting a founding a startup. There's this idea that we have, I think, just probably throughout human history, that when somebody's successful, they know everything, right? Like, oh, they know. They did it because they're smarter than me, or they're this, that. And really, if you watch long enough, what you realize is that, A, nobody's smarter than you. Everybody's fucking stupid.
Yep.
And B, there's nothing special about the person. In fact, they may even be worse in most areas. They just excelled in one specific area. And if you can conquer that area and you're not as bad in these other areas as them, you might be more successful, right? Or you may not. A lot of it might just be your destiny, your fate. I have no idea. But that's what really struck me about this interview. I was like, damn, this guy, these aren't even hard questions. Like, why is he getting so pissed? You know, it's like, did your PR people not kind of tell you like how to answer that question? I don't know.
No. And if they tried to, he disregarded it, was doing something else. I mean, the other piece that was really funny about it is they leaked out that his Don Lemon's demands.
Yeah, that was funny.
I need to get him to negotiate. It was like $8 million and stock in SpaceX and a truck. I mean, get the fuck out of here, Don Lemon.
Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna be hawking. You're going to soon be on QVC, man, hawking shit.
Totally.
I mean, that's your next stop.
Yeah. He's gonna be the athletic greens on his new podcast. I'm telling you right now.
Right? Yeah. That exactly. Right. That'll be
so funny.
And again, I mean, you got to give the guy credit for like go big, man. Right.
You never know until you ask. Maybe he's gonna say yes. Who knows? I mean,
right?
Yeah. You got to at least ask. I respect it.
How toxic must Don Lemon be though? If like he's singing for a supper to,
for sure
on this thing. I mean, holy shit. I mean, like what must the rejection emails he must be pretty impressive.
I was struck he went back on CNN to talk shit about, well, he didn't really talk shit. That's not fair. But to discuss being, immediately terminated by Elon Musk. And I was thinking to myself, like, man, is that not at all embarrassing to go back to the company that fired you to talk about the next company that fired you? Do you know what I mean? It was almost a meta moment. I was like, am I in a dream? Why is this guy going on CNN to have this conversation?
And you know what's funny about it and kind of pathetic is that the lack of self-awareness is that, a guy without, a billionaire hires you to essentially be a mouthpiece for their organization. And when and your first interview is the head of it, and you think that this is somehow journalism. I mean,
right.
Right. I mean, this is not journalism. It's public relations, and the idea of like not playing that game if you thought you could get $8 million in stock in a truck,
right?
Like, I mean,
sure.
I would be obsequious as possible to get that if I thought that was in the cards. I was going to ask him shit.
Yeah.
When did you decide to become a genius?
Right.
Right. I mean, that would be my questions.
Yeah,
What's it like being a genius every day?
Is it hard to be so unappreciated in our modern times?
Yeah.
I will.
And your sex appeal, women.
Right.
I mean, that's all I'd be doing. I'd be doing that for fucking 90 minutes, man.
For sure.
Give me the check.
For sure. Elon, you know what the world really wants to know? Which supermodel has a crush on you?
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, that's exactly what I would do. It would be 90 minutes of that. That would be
for sure.
Again, I mean, you're on X interviewing the head of X, who's notoriously not interested in journalism.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting.
You're a corporate spokesman.
I wanted to ask you one more thing about Ohio and also Florida. We can talk about briefly, but Ohio's the interesting one. So Trump not only, but he got 79.2% of the vote. And Biden got 87.1% of the vote.
Yeah.
Do you know the difference in actual vote tally, though, is about twice as many votes for Biden? I mean, for Trump?
Yeah.
I mean, it is a drastic difference. And I think the episode before last, when you weren't able to join, I started talking about if we stop looking at percentages and we start looking at actual vote tallies, that also is a pretty bad indicator for Biden right now. I don't know if it's because there's some incumbency, lack of enthusiasm. They're not going to turn out yet. But he is consistently getting half as many or 200,000 less votes than Trump is getting. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it could be a sign, but I think a lot of it is party registration. I mean, what kind of helped Trump, I think, is that the Senate race was helping drive a very competitive Senate race, was helping drive turnout, as opposed to on the Democratic side where there was really nothing to vote for. I mean,
Right.
I mean, I don't even know if Dean Phillips was on the ballot.
Actually,
Probably.
Dean Phillips
But
did quite well. I think he got like 12%. I was shocked. It's his best performance.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what. If you want to read the tea leaves on both Trump and Biden on those kind of numbers, in a general election, if your party isn't voting for you in the mid to high 90s, more like the high 90s, you are in deep shit trouble. If you're only getting 80%, 90% of Democrats or Republicans respectively, it means you are in deep trouble.
Okay.
Because the partisanship, because when you look at stuff like, like Romney and Obama in 12, Obama, they were both getting in the mid 90s, like I think mid to high 90s of their voter base. And that's kind of what you should be getting. And if you are not getting that, you have a disaffection problem. I've done some races that have been kind of interesting, because my candidate was disliked among a fair amount of Republicans, and the Democratic candidate was disliked among a fair amount of Democrats. And so the game became, as opposed to trying to get undecideds, both campaigns were trying to melt down the other's core.
Yeah, exactly.
And I won that, but won that by 32,000 votes out of like 4 million.
Wow.
I would say do not try this at home, kids, because it went into a recount and it went forever, and it's a dangerous game to play. But it certainly is. It is a tactic that was doable.
Yeah,
it was manageable.
Wow.
But
yeah, it's interesting. I think you're right, and you touched on something. There was a contentious Senate race as well. So I wonder if that actually may help Democrats, having some of these senators that are in jeopardy, like you mentioned, Casey, and also Casey being in Pennsylvania, that's a very important one. Sherrod Brown, that's a very important one. So that helped. I mean, Ohio's gone, but Pennsylvania, that could help Democrats, because there's going to be some enthusiasm to maybe get out and protect their senator, right?
Yeah, Casey and Montana. There's going to be get out and test her in Arizona to vote against Carrie
Gallegos.
Gallegos. And if you are not winning, if the Republican is not winning Pennsylvania, Montana, and Arizona, that becomes a very difficult map. Not impossible, but a very difficult map.
Right.
But again, the trick with states like Ohio is Republicans have done a really great job over the years of creating kind of honey traps for Democrats in places like Texas and Florida, where it kind of looks competitive, and they pump in $100 million. I mean, somebody said that there was, in the past 4 elections, Democrats have spent $500 million in Texas and got zip out of it,
Yeah.
And
half that went to Beto O'Rourke.
Yeah, and then I can't think of her name was, but she ran against Abbott the first time. They called her Abortion Barbie.
Oh God,
I can't think of it, because she gave a speech on the floor about abortion, but she dressed like Barbie, and she was like, she raised crazy amounts of money, beautifully dressed, but she dressed like Barbie.
Yeah.
And then it came out where she left her husband and kids to, I don't know, it was some kind of but anyway. But those kind of races that just. So does Ohio become that for Republicans? Do Republicans have to spend money in Ohio because it's so soft?
Right.
And if you're spending it there, one of the things in 08, I did John McCain. I worked on John McCain's campaign. And, people said, oh, if you didn't pick Sarah Palin, it's like, get the fuck out of here. We got outspent by over $500 million.
Right.
And $500 million in a presidential race when you only need, when you can define winning by blocking 3 or 4 states,
right,
is a tremendous amount of money. So, for instance, in the state of Florida, and I'm doing this by memory, Democrats, Obama spent like almost 70 million, and McCain spent like 28 million.
Mm-hmm.
And Obama won Florida, but more importantly, he made us use limited resources. And so if you're Biden and you're going to outraise Trump by $1 billion, three-quarters of $1 billion, do you put $100 million in Ohio to tie them up there?
Exactly.
And by the way, that's why there's nothing like doing a presidential race. And it's like if you're a political junkie, it's like you're shooting it straight into your vein.
Yeah.
For 9 months.
It's the big map. It's the big. You're moving all the chess pieces. Yeah.
And you sit around and you look. You sit around in a room and you kind of look, and it's, you go through all the data, and then at a certain point, it's kind of like what's winnable, what's not winnable, and then what's tactical and what's strategic and what's doable and what is an inside, what is pulling an inside straight. I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's playing on the big chessboard.
Wow.
And there's nothing like it,
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. To add on to Ohio, in Florida, in our contest, because we had some winners of a recent contest, we had the line in Florida for Trump at 86.1, and he actually took 81.2. So we were a bit high on that. Mm-hmm. I think he underperformed there, to be honest with you. Yeah. Haley took 13.9% of the vote in Florida, which is Florida is a pretty Trump-friendly state.
Yeah. So can Democrats target that 13-14% on a national basis?
Right.
And because, and when I say national basis, I don't mean nationally. I mean, can they extrapolate that out in Montana? Can they extrapolate that out in Georgia? Can they extrapolate that out in North Carolina? Because all of a sudden it takes something that they should lose into something they could win.
Right.
Montana is a very interesting thing, because you think Montana, you think Republican. It's not at all. Montana's a purple state. I mean, it had a Democratic governor before this one was a Democrat. They've got a Democrat senator. And the most Trump has ever gotten in Montana is 56%. That's not a...
Is it consistently 56%? I mean, 50 purple, or is it trending one way or the other?
Montana for decades was blue, was a Democratic state. And because of the cultural history of Montana, and it's like Montana was really one of the hotbeds of progressive politics. You don't think of it now, but it really was.
Yeah.
And if you want to go down a wormhole, do Butte copper mining, and but it was kind of radical, labor union stuff and strikes and murders, and it's crazy shit. And then
Pinkertons.
And then in the early 90s, it started to go Republican. And one of the reasons it started to go Republican is there were a bunch of Hollywood millionaires moving up into Montana. And they were really bad. They were bad neighbors. They were assholes.
Yeah,
they were like, it was like, take the picture in your mind of the quintessential Los Angeles Hollywood asshole and move them to Montana. And there's a certain amount of cultural fuck you going on up there.
Yeah.
Because I did in 94, I did a senator named Conrad Burns, who was reelected in 94. And he was the first Republican senator reelected in the state's history.
Oh.
So it was pretty blue and it turned red, but now it's becoming purple again. And again, you've had John Tester's now. He's going to go for his third term senator, man. That's kind of rough. I mean, that's not a fluke.
Right. Okay. All right. So we'll keep an eye on Montana as well. I want to talk to you briefly about, let's dive into the world of industry.
Yeah.
All right. So Trump, what he said about first of all, what he said about the auto industry, the Chinese auto industry not allowing their electric vehicles or their vehicles. I personally have no idea if the bloodbath comment was meant for that or what, whatever. I don't know what was on his mind. I'm not going to try to guess. But I did read that what he said about Chinese imports of their auto industry and of their cars is resonating on kind of all sides of the political spectrum. And it's interesting how, to me, how his protectionist statements have usurped and hijacked attention away from Biden, who has a long track record of supporting union workers and auto union. And I believe the most recent stats show that there are more auto workers now than there were under Trump. Like the industry has come back to a certain degree. Yeah. That probably has, my guess would be that has nothing to do with either one of them. It just might have to do with kind of other larger macro environment things.
Or maybe maybe if you measure it, COVID.
A little bit of all those things, maybe, right? What do you think? Is this a winning kind of thing for him? So I think the border is a good argument for Trump. And is now protectionism a good thing for Trump?
Yeah, I think protectionism is a very good thing for Trump because it seems a natural thing for Trump to be for. I mean, he was certainly for, in his first term, I think it was steel tariffs.
Yeah.
He was very big pushing steel tariffs. Whether they hurt or help is an entirely different discussion. Right. But I think
the farmers, right? Didn't he put tariffs on farm goods and stuff?
Yeah. So it's a natural position. I think that part of that too is the EV position. Is that, if you look at where EVs are sold, they're all in blue states in really small areas. And, and I think that the EV thing is a cultural piece to it because there's a lot of municipalities in, I want to say it was Wisconsin, maybe it was Michigan, that they made this big investment in EV buses and they don't work in the cold. Hello. And, the Biden infrastructure plan where they spent, I don't know, it was $32 billion and they built 8 chargers. And I think that kind of stuff drives people crazy.
Yeah.
And because EV, I've got a diesel and we've got an EV, but like the EV argument is largely cultural now. I don't think it has anything to do with the cars, which is, by the way, why Musk is a really interesting case study because, Musk pulls people both ways on that.
Yeah, he does.
But I think that the EV thing is a cultural symbol. It's a, and so I think attacking EV coming in is a win-win, and I think tariffs are a win-win for Trump.
A quick statement on Tesla. I guess when we talk about EVs, there are multiple of them, but Tesla's dominated that branding-wise, right? But a friend of mine who, I won't say his name, but he worked very high up at SpaceX. We were talking about kind of the, what cars, and he was in LA for a long time, symbolize like specific industries and stuff. And we both were like, yeah, for like the 90s and early 2000s, Hollywood douchebags all drove BMWs. Every like low-level creative executive asshole was like a BMW 3 Series, right? And then I said, now they're all driving Teslas. Every fucking douchebag in LA that's a like low-level creative, all Teslas, all the Model S's and whatever. So they've become, to your point, like they're so cultural that you can identify them with like a specific type of person, right?
Yeah.
They're massive here in Austin because there are probably more Teslas on the road than any other single model that you will see. And because of the big factory. There's so many Tesla workers, I guess, and they get them probably at cost or something.
Right.
So, yeah. So you're right. It's very cultural. I wonder if, and also, they're not useful all the time. They're good in LA, maybe where your commute is not that far, but it takes forever and it's whatever.
Right. You're not buying a Tesla in Wyoming.
Exactly. So like upper Midwest, like Wisconsin or Minnesota or wherever, like aided on the buses, that's stupid. That's not the right way to go with that. So everyone hates that. I get that. But is there a way to go with the argument that is if Biden says we want to invest in our domestic electric, rather than being protectionist and saying you can't come in, we can do that too. But that's only going to hold. That's just like the little Dutch boy with his finger in the dike. That's not going to last forever. We need to invest in our own version. China should not be the world's largest producer of solar panels. We should be. Like, these are the arguments, I think, that could he reframe it to his advantage? Biden, I mean.
Not now. I mean, I think that he had the opportunity. And, that was kind of the infrastructure.
The bill, right? That was kind of what he was doing.
That was the bill. And apparently all that stuff, I mean, they said all that stuff passed. And again, part of the problem with that stuff is that, there's an interesting article in, it might have been the Atlantic, and it was called Why We Can't Build Things Anymore.
I think I saw that. I mean, I didn't read it, but.
Yeah. But the whole thing with the, EV chargers and, they built 8 or 16 or some crazy number of chargers, and they've got all this money. I mean, in California with the, the train, the bullet train, it was passed in 2008. There was a news story this week that they almost have all the environmental clearances finished. And it went up another $100 billion.
Wow, good.
And, people look at that kind of stuff. And I mean, the California thing is a special case of incompetency. In Florida, they did a train from Miami to Orlando and then to Tampa, light rail, and they did it in 3 years. Wow. So, I think that the California thing was a ballot initiative driven grift from day one. I don't think it was ever a serious project.
What they call what those two radio personalities? I don't remember what their names are in LA or California. They called it the Browndoggle, right? Wasn't Jerry Brown the governor when that passed?
Yeah. And again, I mean, it's a dumb idea because why? If I can fly to San Francisco from Burbank Airport in 90 minutes, why the fuck am I going to get on a train for 5 hours?
And they were only going to build the first stage, which was to Barstow or some shit. It was nobody wants to go there.
Right? I mean, and again, it's a 17th century or 18th century technology. I mean, again, the whole thing was dumb, but of all the irrational political types, the pro-train people are the most irrational. You can't, I had this conversation with somebody out in LA, and I'm like, they said, "Oh, if you had the train, it's better for the environment." And I said, "So, I want to go to San Francisco for a business trip, and I'm going to stay a couple days. How exactly do I get from the valley to the station? Do I walk?" Well, no, you'd have to take a car. Right? No, it would have to be an Uber or a taxi. It would have to be something. And it's I guess it would be conceivable that I could take public trans. And I did figure out how to do bus line there. But it would be a 4-hour maybe bus trip.
Oh, my God.
By the time I had to connect, carrying my luggage. What are you, insane? I mean, and again, it's just, it's, I mean, I get it's with good intentions, but I mean, it's just, I mean, $100 billion in LA or in California, you could fund every school, you could build shit, you could actually do real things.
100%. 100%.
You could get homeless. You could build enough housing to house everybody twice over, but you can't. But
You could even shore up that $90 billion of budget shortfall you're going to have over the next 10 years. And you know what I mean? Like, there's so much you can do with it.
Build giant fucking desalination plants off the fucking coast and have an endless supply of water.
100%. 100%. Okay. So we ventured it. So you said you could fly from let's say Orange County or even LAX to San Francisco. It's about a 90-minute flight, much more convenient than rail. That leads me to my next question, and maybe we'll have to end it on it. Did Boeing kill the whistleblower? Don't say anything that's going to put us on their hit list, by the way.
Yeah, no. Well, I know they didn't do that. No, it was certainly suspicious.
Yeah.
Here's why I would discount it. I mean, I certainly went. Here's why I will discount that.
Yeah.
The idea that Boeing would be competent enough to do anything, much less do a fucking assassination, is not credible.
Right.
I mean, they have doors falling off planes. I mean, they're idiots. They're incompetent. Number one. Number two, if you look at the highest percentage of suicides in the country, he fits
they're all
that
at Holiday
profile.
Inn parking lots.
And again, I mean, let's wait and see. But I certainly went,
Did you see the most recent thing from two things, actually, I saw on Breaking Points? Shout out to Crystal and I don't know his name, Cigar. One of his very good friends said that he told her a couple of weeks before, if I die, it wasn't a suicide. And she's now said that on multiple press things. But, families have a hard time dealing with suicide. Maybe she's making that up, or maybe she's misremembering something.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that did come out from his attorneys was that he was supposed to be done that day, and he had intended to start driving home. And it was the Boeing lawyers who said, no, we want you to stay another day. So that was why he went and got that hotel, and that was why he was there that night. All of this is just kind of a precursor to say, obviously, if you are, I don't remember her name, but the congresswoman from that district in outside of Seattle and Washington, this doesn't hurt her, the fact that she's taken all of Boeing's money and helped them, get the FAA to allow them to self-certify themselves. Doesn't hurt her, because the only people she has to answer to are the people who work at Boeing, and they don't want to lose their jobs. Is there any cost anyone will pay for this on a political front? Is there anyone that no?
No, I don't think so. I mean, unless there's another shoe to drop.
Right.
I did have a friend that worked for Boeing, and he worked in, I think, the finishes and fabrications part of it. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah.
But the joke, they used to call it the Lazy Bee Ranch.
Wow. The Lazy Bee Ranch.
Apparently, this is not a new
problem. I think the only caveat to that might be...
the entire culture is all fucked.
I think the only caveat to that might be, Chris, does this not jeopardize their military contracts? I mean, if bolts are coming off plane doors and they are making planes for the U.S. military, we might want to start to question whether or not some of that shit's not going to work when we need it to.
Yeah, I mean, because the Ford Pinto. I mean, literally, you could be up for homicide. I mean, if you were knowingly, I mean, that I don't think it's a first degree murder charge, obviously,
right?
But it would be a murder charge or negligent death. I mean, actually, I'm kind of getting the legal weeds here, but I mean, like a negligent death, and that would have giant repercussions.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, if they're potentially looking at negligent death for a plane crash, maybe whacking a whistleblower is not that big of a deal.
I mean, I keep waiting to hear, did he have, was there a suicide note?
Apparently there was a note.
Okay.
That what I saw that on the Breaking Points report, I think, when they talked about the lawyers announced that it was the Boeing lawyers that asked them to stay, and then they said that the police have acknowledged that there was a note. So the question is, though, was the note up in the room and he killed himself down in the car? Like, anyway, I would be very curious to know.
Yeah, who was he screwing? The rental car company or the maid that had to clean up the room?
Totally,
right?
Totally.
He was ruining somebody's day.
Somebody, somebody got they got a surprise when they went to clean.
Yeah.
All right, let me ask you a couple questions. Just two things. Biden over under Missouri the Democratic primary 77.2%.
Ooh. Over.
Okay, that's a good one. And Louisiana, Trump over under 90.8.
I'm sorry, you froze. Trump under.
Trump over or under 90.8.
Ooh. Over.
Oh, okay. And Biden, Louisiana, over under 80.1.
Under.
Oh, okay. All right. Do you have anything for me?
No, I don't. I have.
All right.
But I will
All
next.
right. We have a couple. I think I shared with you these contests. Those are actually the lines from the contest that I shared with you. And if anybody else is interested, we have a couple contests running for Louisiana and Missouri. The Show Me Big Easy is the name of that.
The Show Me Big Easy. I like it.
Yeah. All right. I'll see you next time, Chris. Until then, we're done.
Thanks, Justin.